in a world of AI, we need to make a human connection. Not that we shouldn't use AI all the time to support what we do, but we need to connect with human. If customers are humans, and I'm guessing most of the people listening to this have customers who are actually human beings. If customers are human, we need to connect with them. We need to make them feel special. We need to show them that we care. And so I think that's a vital part of whatever is the secret sauce that's our unique value. But again, you can't win if you're not different in a way that matters.
Alan Gregerman, welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Well, greetings. Thanks for having me on. Delighted to have a chance to talk with you.
Well, I know many of our listeners will be listening to this in audio, but I got to encourage them to switch onto the video because I love your glasses, I love your shirt, and it really makes. I'm hearing this very dowdy grey shirt, and you're in a beautiful blue shirt. So I'm going to have to up my game from here on in. Lesson learned.
Well, you got a bit of a hipster look there, so that's okay. I
All
mean,
right, excellent. Okay.
I'm really into color. So, and
Yeah,
if people look at the video, they'll see that.
yeah, and the color suits you very, very, very well. Um, this is a show for entrepreneurs, and when we think of leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, we think of them for their intelligence, their wisdom, their knowledge. Um, and you've just written a book, published I think in the last 3 or 4 weeks, called "The Wisdom of Ignorance: Why Not Knowing Can Be the Key to Innovation in an Uncertain World." Alan, are you telling me that everything I know, my 40 years of experience, is hindering me instead of helping me?
Well, no, I don't want to say that it's hindering you, but I'd like you and your listeners to think a little bit differently about innovation. And first, let me step back and suggest, we live in a fast changing world. So the reality is 5 years from now will be very different than today. But here's what I've discovered, and I've been doing this for a lot of years. And that is, the more I know about something, the more I can make it better. I know the ins and outs, the details of it. The more I don't know about something, the more likely I am to create a breakthrough because I look at it with fresh eyes. I have a different perspective. So, what I tell leaders, entrepreneurs, folks who know a lot is it's fine to know a lot. I always say there's value in knowing and there's genius in not knowing. And so, what I always suggest to folks is just realize that there are limits to what you know and that what you know has gotten you where you are today, but it's not going to get you to the future. What you don't know is going to get you to the future.
It seems that there must be a balance there between those two things. Is this the skill you're pointing people towards? Is finding how to live in both worlds, the world of knowing, because we need to know stuff, but we need to innovate as well.
Well, so I think about your company or organization, or think about the world more broadly. And that is, there are a lot of things we haven't figured out yet. There are new products and services that we can offer, new experiences for customers. There are all these societal problems we haven't solved yet with what we know already. So I believe for all these things, we need to take a fresh look. If I'm in business, I need to realize that there are lots of folks out there with totally new business models that might be using technology in new ways that are changing the game in my industry. I need to figure out how to get beyond where they are. If I'm kind of in the world trying to wrestle with an issue like homelessness or poverty or education, I need to take a fresh look at all those things because we haven't quite cracked the code. I need to say to myself, is there a better way to do the things that really matter?
I suppose when you think of it, I mean, you've gone from business there to some really big issues there, like poverty and homelessness, etc. Um, when we see major changes, it's always innovation in these areas. It's always because someone has come up with a way of approaching it that we weren't doing it before.
Well, exactly. And so think about it. If you think about as your audience, the whole idea of being an entrepreneur is you get into business because you believe you have a better way of doing something. And so
Hmm.
you say to yourself, the folks who are already out there serving these customers don't exactly know what to do, but I have something better to offer. That's kind of an act of faith, but it's a launching something new out there. And so what I want people to do is realize we all have the ability to launch something new, and that more often than not we'll launch it from not knowing and taking a new look at something and saying, maybe I can bring these technologies together, or maybe I can think of the world differently, or maybe I can tap other people in our community who can be remarkable. So I think it's this willingness to take a fresh look, to be humble and take a fresh look, that really drives brilliant ideas.
Um, a couple things you said there. Well, the first thing that came to mind is that could have had so many business conversations on this podcast, and the statistics tell us that 95% of all businesses fail, and that in 10 years' time, of all the businesses that start, 99.5, 99% of those will be less than a million, and less than a half percent of those will have exceeded 10 million. So there's a lot of innovation not work.
Well, so that's fair enough, okay? But, so, and again, I might not be the right guy because I'm not a data guy and a
Yeah.
statistic guy. I'm an innovation guy. I get excited when somebody has a compelling idea. I believe we can test it in the marketplace before we launch it,
Mm.
though. So
Yeah.
the reality is, a lot of people test ideas. I walk by businesses every single day and I say to myself, they won't be here in a year. They should have asked me as a business consultant whether or not they should have started this business in this location, doing this and serving these customers. But we can test things. I'm not suggesting to anybody that they just say, I got a brilliant idea because I'm brilliant. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to be the big winner. A lot of those will not be super successful, but I believe we can test today. We can come up with an idea that's half baked, share it with potential customers, see what they think, refine it based on their input, then send it back to them and say, is this something you'll buy? And we can dramatically increase the odds that we're going to be successful. Similarly, with folks whose businesses remain small, we have to figure out, what does it take to jumpstart my business and make it bigger, make it appealing to more people?
You see, it's interesting because I've shared this concept about the amount of businesses fails on a number of occasions, and it was introduced to me about, could have been 12 years ago, standing in a room in London with Tony Robbins and about 1,000 business owners in a room, and he asked the question of how many of you are business owners. 90% of the room stood up because it was a business program, and then he goes, how many of you are in business, more than a year, five, etc. He got to the question of how many of you are in business for 10 years or more with revenue in excess of 10 million, and there were maybe 25 people left standing in a room of 1,000. So it was tiny. Um, and so that stayed with me. But my thinking has changed on it recently. And my thinking, because I've refined it slightly, and it's my own thinking, and I don't know, but my thinking is, yes, that's true. Um, Lots of businesses fail. And then I thought about the amount of businesses I have failed in. And I'm not a serial entrepreneur by any means, but I think probably about five or six businesses I have failed in, and I have been relatively successful now in business for many decades. Um, but I had a number of failures along the way, and I redefined that statement to go, yes, lots of businesses fail, but lots of entrepreneurs succeed. In other words, I fall into that statistic because I've had five of those businesses that didn't succeed, but I define myself as successful because I kept going. And I think this is, the statistics don't tell you that. How many times is there one entrepreneur that's responsible for 10 failures and then he nailed it and he became mega successful?
Well, so I think you're actually really right, but I'd like to change, I guess, a little. We talk about businesses failing, and with the approach I like to use with our customers, my focus is not on failing. My focus is on learning to get to where you just talked about, learning to be successful, and that a lot of times we have to do several experiments to get to the point of delivering something valuable to the marketplace. So for me, it's, how do I learn fast and kind of furiously? How do I figure out the things I don't know, without investing a lot of money, then go on to the next iteration and the next iteration till I get to the point where I'm valuable? So
Mm.
I like to think of everything as learning. And again, I'm not a super huge person on statistics. All I know is I've worked with 400 companies around the world over the 37 years we started our business. 90% of them actually have been successful in launching important innovations. I think you got to do your homework. You got to engage the market. You got to be out there seeing what the market needs. And then I think you got to keep iterating until you get it right. But that's more fun than having a regular job.
Yeah, and I love what you said there. You said you have to learn to be successful, which is just redefining the fact that of the story I've said is that yes, entrepreneurs and businesses, I'm going to say fail just to make the point, but that's what happens. We go out and we get things wrong, and we if we go, well, I'm learning how to be successful just like I learn anything else, and that means I have to try this, it not succeed. And often when we say it doesn't succeed, often what happens is it's just what we tweak it slightly and we move on. And it's a process. I suppose the learning to successful is continually having the ability to tweak and learn and move and shift and change.
Yeah, we just have to figure it out, but it's all based on paying attention, okay? And combining what we know, the skills that we have, or what we could know with what the market needs. How many people listening to this podcast um, taught themselves, maybe their parents helped a little bit, to ride a bicycle? Very few hopped on a bicycle, and the first time they started to pedal, balanced perfectly and rode wherever they wanted to go. And so what happened was you got on, you kind of figured it out. You thought about how to balance yourself. You fell on your butt a few times, and then you eventually figured it out. I think of kind of entrepreneurship or business the same way. But I think we make calculated kind of tweaks or adjustments or new learning. And those calculated learnings, if we're paying attention, get us to a point of being successful.
So is our relationship with failure very important?
Well, I think our relationship with learning is very
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
So again, I,
How we define it, how we
yeah,
define the learning experience.
yeah, because I'm going to actually put my tail between my legs and kind of hide if I believe I'm failing a lot of the time.
Yes,
At
yeah.
some point, I simply go, failing is not particularly fun to do. But if I say to myself, I'm not investing a ton of money, I'm investing my time and I'm getting smarter and smarter and smarter, then I say I'm actually on a path to being successful. And so that changes the equation for me. So I prefer to look at it that way, but I know all the entrepreneurial literature and every entrepreneurial conference talks about, well, you got to fail in order to be successful. I feel you got to learn in order to be successful.
Yeah, it, that seems like a really important definition to me, because I wonder when we're bringing innovate, if we as leaders of organizations talk about failure and that's what we do, I mean, predominantly, but if that becomes the language that we use, then that's the language we're giving to our teams, our people. And now we have people who we want to try new things, who we want to innovate, but they're hearing the word failure all the time and they know failure is not a good thing. So I think it sounds to me like, for the leaders, for the CEOs listening, an important thing would be that they begin to redefine their own language and go, no, we're in a process of learning and we won't get everything right, but we're learning. It's all just learning. It's the same activity. It's just a different approach to it.
Well, I think so. And it's an approach that's more welcoming to people trying new things.
Mhm.
Remember, if I say we're going to fail, how many people want to sign up to fail? It's not a lot of fun.
Nobody.
But if I, as a leader, say, look, we've been pretty darn successful, and that's great. But if we don't keep changing, we're not going to continue to be successful. There are folks out there who are trying to eat our lunch. So here's what we're going to do together. We're going to figure out how to learn the things we need to learn to consistently provide value to the marketplace. That's a whole different equation. That's a positive equation, and it's an energizing equation. Now, my folks say, well, what ideas do I have to help us to learn and grow and add value? Not what do I want to try and do right now, knowing that there's a pretty good chance I'm going to fail. I don't feel like we fail ever when we're learning
Mm.
new stuff. I just feel we have to figure out the right new stuff in order to be valuable. And that's why I wrote The Wisdom of Ignorance. The idea is we have to come clean and admit, I don't know most things. That's
Mhm.
okay. It's not okay to not know stuff and be stupid and not care, but it's awesome to not know stuff and say, now I'm going to figure it out.
It is, and it's funny. I mean, I've been playing the guitar all my life since I was about 15 or 16 years of age, and I'm learning the guitar all of the time. And because I learn, go online or something, and I learn from people who like are exceptional guitarists, I'm there's always somewhere for me to go. Now I could have friends over take the guitar and they go, Paul, you're really, really good. And I go, no, no, no. I'll show you this. This is good. But what the realization I have is that, well, few things. One is that I love playing the guitar. I enjoy it, no matter what, and I've always enjoyed it since I was 15. So I didn't have to get better to enjoy it. But the other thing is, it's actually never ending. It like the learning. There is no point, not for me anyway. But there's no point where you go, you have it learned, Paul. You know it now. You understand the instrument. No, no, no. You are continually learning, growing, enjoying, and expanding. Um, and but that's obvious to everyone when we talk about something like learning a musical instrument or maybe learning a sport. And maybe we just need to take that definition into the business world.
Well, so I think that's a great example, but I'd even push it a little bit more. Certainly, you can learn from some folks that are fantastic, and there are all these
Mm,
YouTube videos out there. We can actually learn anything we want to
it's
by
amazing.
paying attention. But I wouldn't compare you to all these people, and I wouldn't, as you say, well, these people are kind of
Mm,
amazing. Let me show. What I'd say is, I've learned a lot from them, and now I'm going to make my own music. I've
yeah.
learned enough about the guitar that I'm going to think about the guitar in a little bit of a different way and write a different song or play it in a different way. And that's the contribution that
Mm,
ultimately you make, not to be compared to the great guitar players of all time, but rather to be compared to somebody who has something to say about guitar. And that's what business is all about. Is there are lots of other folks I can compare. The number of times somebody comes to me, a customer, and says, I've looked at the best practices of all the folks in our industry, and we need to do that. And I go, well, your industry is pretty pathetic at this. What the best practice in your industry is not a winning proposition. You need to write your own music.
yeah.
And I literally use those words, is that changes the equation. So, yes, learn from folks who know a lot, but then figure out your own path. That's what entrepreneurship is all about, I think.
Self-expression, individuality.
Right. Well, I think we have to be authentic, right? We have to be authentic as people. You have to be authentic playing
Mm,
the guitar.
yeah.
We have to be authentic in business, right? Folks
Mm,
know when we're not authentic in
mm,
being in business. I mean, some folks I know are listening, and so they
mm.
don't see this, but I'm about to hold up a shoe, and
Yeah.
this shoe is from 1912, and it's called the Maine Hunting Boot, and they can look it up online. It was kind of developed by a guy named
That boot you're holding, which looks like
well,
a
the design
the
hasn't
design. I
changed.
was going to say, yeah,
No, the boot, I mean,
not the boot
I'm
itself, but the design is from
the
1912.
design of this boot, the
Wow,
main hunting boot hasn't changed since
that's
1912.
amazing because it looks as modern as
Yeah, yeah, it looks kind of, but it's got a rubber
I see
bottom, so
that.
you
Yeah,
could go in wetness, you could fish or hunt or whatever
yeah,
you wanted to do, and a leather upper sewn. Well, here's the cool story about that. And this boot was invented by a guy named Leonwood Bean. And so for Americans, they've heard the name LL Bean. They now know why he went by LL
yeah,
instead of Leonwood. Um,
yeah.
he starts this idea of a company because he likes to hunt and fish. He ran a business, but he's trying to think about how to add value, and he decides to make some clothing for people who like the out of doors. He creates this boot, and he wants to make sure it's really good. And so he says to all the customers who buy this, if at any time in the life of this shoe you don't believe it's delivering value commensurate with what you paid, um, send it back to me, no questions asked. I'll refund your money. What he had created in modern times, 1912, was the first unconditional guarantee of satisfaction.
Wow, on a
Um,
boot.
on a shoe, something
Wow.
that's going to wear out. Now, you
Yeah.
were kind enough to comment that my shoe looks like it's in pretty good shape here, but it was so on something that's going to wear out. He was so confident in two things: one, that he made a good shoe, and second, that people would decide after a while, I've gotten a lot of value out of this shoe. I'm not going to ask for my money back.
Mm.
And in fact, until 2019, when they got rid of their guarantee because people were asking for their money back for things that were unreasonable, they kept that guarantee. Now, why do I mention that? Because he used a guarantee as his distinction, his competitive advantage. That's how he got into a world where lots of people were making boots, and he stood by that. All I ask people to do is figure out what makes you authentic that matters to customers.
Mm.
Okay, and that's you don't have to have a totally original business idea, but you have to do something that's more valuable. Otherwise, why would a customer change? And so the reality is you can play songs by famous guitarists, um, but the reality is when you start to play their songs and then say, here's something I wrote,
Mm.
based on being inspired, then suddenly people go, well, Paul, now you're crushing it, man.
Mm.
Now it's worth our attention to listen to you.
Yeah, it's interesting because for years, because my businesses are in Ireland, and when we are compared or compete with global multinationals, I always go, well, we're a boutique. We're not in the hotel business, but I use as an example. I go, well, we're like a boutique hotel. We're not a Hilton or a Marriott. I mean, we don't have a hotel in every city in every world, and you turn up and it's the same. We're like that beautiful boutique hotel, and you land in Dublin, and you don't want to go to a Hilton that's the same ever. You want to go to this quirky hotel, and they walk in, they go, Mr. Gregerman, it is great to see you back. I know you like room 12, and I know your wife likes a bottle of mineral water in the room or whatever, and your paper, and you go, that's amazing. Because my approach to our business is, we can't be I don't have a hotel room for you in every city in the world, but when you come and stay with us, it'll be very different to staying in a Hilton. And I that's it seems to me that's kind of like what you're saying about bringing our personality, not trying to be someone that I can't be a global billion-dollar organization, but I can be something so unique when you come to do business with me that it's not like doing business anywhere else.
Well, so I think all of us need to aspire to that. Now, truth be told, our largest customer through the life of our business has been Marriott and
Oh,
Ritz-Carlton hotels. Having said that, I regularly stay in small boutique hotels because I'm looking for a unique experience.
yeah.
I'm looking for an experience in a hotel that's kind of like the experience I'm hoping to have wherever I travel to.
Mm.
So I really love your idea. And I think it's a good, tangible way for the folks who are listening to understand the idea that we have to be different in a way that matters to customers. Just being different doesn't win, but being different tied to what customers are hoping, um, or what customers imagine or aspire to have in a travel experience or any other experience is vital to our success. The other thing you mentioned, which I think is important, and I don't want anyone listening to downplay this, is in a world of AI, we need to make a human connection. Not that we shouldn't use AI all the time to support what we do, but we need to connect with human. If customers are humans, and I'm guessing most of the people listening to this have customers who are actually human beings. If customers are human, we need to connect with them. We need to make them feel special. We need to show them that we care. And so I think that's a vital part of whatever is the secret sauce that's our unique value. But again, you can't win if you're not different in a way that matters.
Yeah, and I think that we we are all different. That is the essence, I would say, is that we actually are all different. But do we want to play our own songs, or do we want to try and look at someone else's music? But it's interesting because I know from some of your other work that when you talked about the necessity of strangers, and this was in your presentation, and I'm going to kind of misquote you, but I get it if I get it right. You were explaining how that almost all innovation already exists and is inspired by other people or nature, and all we do is we take something that exists and we innovate slightly on it. So it's all around us. Am I getting the essence of?
Yeah. And this is a great thing to talk about. So I talk about in a few of my books, Necessity of Strangers, but also in the new book, The Wisdom of Ignorance, this idea that's what I call the 99% rule. It turns out throughout the course of human history, 99% of all new ideas have been based on someone else's thinking or something that somebody found in nature. Now, that should radically change the way we think about innovation, because instead of sitting in a room with a blank sheet of paper and racking our brains to come up with a new idea, we simply need to engage the world, find ideas that matter, and then apply them to our world or a world that we think we can have impact in. Examples abound. So, my guess is almost everyone who's listening to this has taken an Uber. And they probably think that an Uber is better than a taxi cab. Was Uber founded by people who were in the taxi cab business? Actually, not. The wisdom of ignorance was at play. It was founded by two friends who were in Paris, France on a winter night and couldn't find a taxi. And they realized that there was something out there called GIS or GPS, Global Positioning Systems or Global Information Systems. The ability to bring 2 points on a map together. Someone with a car. Wait, I have a car here. For those of you who are listening, I have a car here. It's actually a NASCAR race car sponsored by Raytheon, one of our customers. But so they had the ability to have someone with a car kind of come to somebody who needed a ride. I have
Yeah.
Spider-Man here. I
Spider-Man needed a ride, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. He probably doesn't need a ride, but maybe it's congested in the sky wherever he is at a given time. So, what did these guys do? They thought about a new business based on a new technology, relatively new technology that could transform an existing business. Taxi cabs existed, they knew that. GPS existed, they knew that. What if I brought those two together? So I'd love everybody listening to understand you just have to bring ideas together, then add your uniqueness, your secret sauce, or your spin to it. But we tend to be brilliant when we pay attention to things going on. And then when we pay attention to things going on, we connect some dots that no one's connected before. It's not that the dots don't exist, it's that our connection is more remarkable.
It's interesting what you said there, pay attention. And what those two young gents were doing was paying attention to their experience, and maybe often we're not paying attention. I don't know why, but we're not paying attention to what's going on. But they were in a situation where there was a problem, and they began to seek a solution to it. And as you point out, they didn't create the solution; they brought two existing technologies together.
Yeah. And it wasn't remember, it wasn't a problem that they uniquely had. They're
No,
not
we
the
all had
first
it.
people to
No.
try and find a taxi in a busy city. And many of us are frustrated. I mean, think about the old way. We'd stand on a corner and hope we picked the right street for an empty taxi to go by. That's kind of an inefficient way to find a ride. And so the idea was there must be a better way. And examples abound. I would argue, in my new book, The Wisdom of Ignorance, is all about this, that actually most breakthroughs are going to occur when people suspend what they already know and look at the world around them, find ideas, and then use those ideas as the basis for thinking in new ways. I mean, it's just profoundly simple, but it's actually a fun way to be an entrepreneur.
And I suppose you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not starting from scratch because you're looking for something that already works. Maybe it works somewhere different in a different application. So you've proven that this is something that works, and you're just thinking about it differently. Funny as you're talking about them being in a rain night in Paris, I can remember my one of my first times using Uber. I remember sitting in a restaurant owned by Jamie Oliver, if you know him. He's a famous chef this side of the world. Sitting in his restaurant in London, maybe it was Manchester, but anyway, London or Manchester, and sitting maybe 5 days before Christmas, and I'm having dinner with my wife, and it's snowing outside, and we're only about 10 minutes from our hotel, and we'd walked over. But by the time we finished our evening, the snow was coming down, and all these people trying to get cabs. And I went to my wife and said, Have you come across Uber? Watch this. Bump. And I get an Uber. We walk downstairs in the snow. We get into the Uber. I don't even have to talk to him. He knows where to take me. I never was trying to find a cab. But of course, the whole world is looking for cabs, and these two guys thought of Uber. But the thing about when I hear stories of innovation, um, And you go to a business seminar and you hear about Apple and Google and Facebook and all of these things and all the same stories. And I always think it's so easy to tell the story afterwards. But it's afterwards, this is what Uber did. But we're in the before. You know,
Well, yeah, but there are lessons to learn. So think about this. Everybody thinks Apple is one of the most innovative companies in the world. And I would say yes and no. So let me kind of share with you this. So here's my iPhone for those folks who are listening. If you're watching, you see it's my iPhone. And I not only make calls, I mean, I have 1,000 apps, I do all kinds of things,
yeah.
but I watch video content. Okay. And that was one of the first things that was pretty popular, to be able to listen to music or watch video content in files that are called MP3 files. Did Apple invent the ability to kind of take my music or videos with me? No, actually not. Several of your listeners will think about a great company called Sony that
Hmm.
invented something called the Walkman.
Yes,
I
I
have
have one.
daughters, so I call it the walk person. But
Yeah.
they invented, what was that? 1979. The ability to take my music anywhere I wanted in multiples of 12 songs, because I had to put a cassette
Yeah.
or a DVD in or a CD in. Okay, so Apple takes that idea. Apple says portable music, that's kind of a cool thing. Apple then says there's new technology out there that enables us to do this. MP3 technology. Did Apple invent that? No. MP3 technology was invented in 1986 by two German engineers. So they didn't invent the notion of portable entertainment. They didn't invent the technology that drives it. And I would even argue, I mean, this is really pushing people back, but I would argue that the idea of where I get all my content, the Apple Store, is a 2,300-year-old idea. Because imagine 2,300 years ago, the Egyptians built a library called the Great Library of Alexandria, Egypt, and in that library was the world's largest source at the time of content. It was all
Hmm.
handwritten content, of course. What's the Apple Store? The world's largest repository of digital content.
Hmm.
So the reality is, Apple is brilliant at packaging
Hmm.
intuitive devices and putting ideas together, but it's not like they've invented everything. So we have a misnotion. Our misnotion is that these brilliant companies are the most innovative and creative, inventing original things. I would argue they're the best at paying attention to ideas around them and the best at turning those into products and services that matter.
Hmm. And solving the problem of how they how they make it better, because that's the Uber guys did.
Right,
You could already get a taxi. They just made it so much better. And I
right.
remember sitting in San Diego, the morning flying home from a conference many years ago, and sitting in my room, and I had to leave my room about 10 or 11 in the morning, so just before checkout, and I could see down over the lobby and see the taxis outside. Um, but I could also just remain sitting in the comfort of my room and hit Uber, and wait until I got a message and walk down and get in. And it was so much simpler. Um, but I remember thinking to myself, when something, this is maybe the reason for innovation. It's because if you're in the taxi and the Uber comes along, you have to wake up to the fact that the world is changing.
You would think so.
You would think so. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not certain that most taxis have done that. I mean, they've made some tweaks, right? They've made it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the problem is, or the opportunity for a lot of us, is there are a lot of kind of entrenched businesses that are really slow to change
Yes.
or unwilling to change, because it would mean they have to do things very, very differently. And that's hard to do. I mean,
Yeah.
think about, wherever you're located in the US and Canada, think about Blockbuster, okay? 9,000 stores where we used to go to get videos. Then this little upstart, Netflix, comes along and says, well, we can mail you DVDs. You don't have to go to a store, and we won't charge you late fees. We just won't give you another DVD until you mail back the other one. Was that like a radical difference? No, but it got to pain points that customers had. There's only one Blockbuster store in the world today. There were 9,000. Now there's one in Oregon, and it's only because people like to hang out at the store. It's a small town in Oregon. Um, but the reality is, we have to pay attention. And if we don't pay attention, we get blindsided. Customers come to me all the time, or I give a speech, and then somebody comes up and says, "Well, Alan, I really loved what you talked about, but our customers love us."
Mm.
And I say to them, with all due respect, the only reason your customers love you is because they haven't found anything better yet. As soon as they find something better, they will drop you like a hot whatever, potato or anything, because they want their needs to be better met. We have to be the ones that consistently deliver better. If we don't, we lose.
I loved my Sony Walkman.
Well, I have mine somewhere here, but since we're on audio part of the time, I won't bring it out
And
here.
I remember I remember I don't know how many years it was ago changing my car. Myself and my son were driving somewhere, and it was the first time I could connect my, maybe it was an iPod at the time or iPhone, to the whole digital display in the car. And I sat on and we had this 2.5 hour drive and go, wow, every piece of music I own is on this. And it was incredible. And this is your point, I think, that when now, Apple or whoever was offering me something that was so far ahead of what the
Right.
Sony Walkman can do, that obviously changing. I own a bricks and mortar business, and we sell dirty old cable, and so it's not a very exciting business. And I wonder, to what degree does all do all businesses have to innovate? And I give an example. A couple of nights ago, I flew back from Spain earlier this week, and so always on our last night over there, we ramble down to my favorite restaurant over there. And the restaurant is called the Grappa, and it's a small little Italian restaurant, and we've been going in there for years, and they know us well. And it's a few things strike me about it. One is that there are lots of restaurants along this street, and this is, so we're recording this in October. So this is sorry, we're recording this in November. So it was early November, which is quiet over there in Spain. The summer tourists are all gone, and it's this guy's restaurant is very, very busy. We ramble in, and he knows us well. He greets us by name. He brings we lovely meal. We tend to eat the same food in there, and but we love it. Now, do we love the sameness of it? Is where I'm getting at. Do I want to go in and find that he's innovated and become a Mexican restaurant? I don't. So, where's this line for this guy as a business owner? And he does a super job to going, my customers love what I do. They have a choice of your 7 or 8 restaurants along the street. A lot of them love to come to me consistently. We go there regularly. To what degree does he or any other business owner go, I'm doing this really, really well? Where does innovation come into us? Like he's not an AI business. Where does innovation come into a small business like that that's doing well?
Okay, so a few things to think about. Well, first, let me step back and wonder why in Spain you're eating Italian food. No, I won't.
Well, actually, yeah,
No, no, no.
I do we call it Italian restaurants, more Mediterranean, I suppose.
Okay, no, 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 that's fine. I'm giving you a hard
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, but here's the thing. Um, if his customers never changed and they always wanted the same thing, eggplant parmesan
yeah, yeah.
or you know,
Pizza or whatever. Yeah,
chicken bolognese or whatever they
yeah,
wanted, then he doesn't have to change. Um, and if they're happy with him as he gets older, that's awesome. But I'm guessing both his existing customers and a new generation of customers have some slightly different expectations.
yeah.
So my guess is there's some specials on the menu, and those specials are going to bring in people who say, "I'm tired of eggplant parmesan,
Mhm.
but I love the way these people cook." I'm also guessing over time that maybe his menu will have a QR code. Maybe he'll stop printing menus, and maybe because a new generation walks into a restaurant and says, "Where's the QR code so I can look at the menu on my phone?" So I'm guessing he might do that. I'm guessing that he might think about the people he employs and kind of how they might be different over time. So they help him to connect to a new kind of clientele. So I just believe the world is changing now. For some, as you're pointing out, for some, it's kind of slower. I have a favorite restaurant I go to. I think it's been around since 1932. I get the same thing all the time. But if I want something different, I'm not going there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm balancing all these things. So there might be a place for him, but I believe he's got to change. And I believe for most of us, we have to up our game.
Yeah, I guess that's the case. And I was interesting. I interviewed a lady called Dr. Lolly Mancy maybe 3 4 months ago, and she's an Irish lady, but she's an AI specialist, and we had a wonderful conversation about how AI was changing the world, and she was more interested in how AI was affecting humanity rather than what it was bringing to us, but how it was affecting you and I. But she gave an example of a store, and I can't remember if it was in Sweden or if it was in Germany, but this store had transitioned to kind of this. You walk around, you scan, and it tots it. You don't
Yeah.
go to a checker. You do all this sort of but what the guy who owned these stores had realized that, do you know, there's actually some people who don't want that. There's some people who, I'm going to say maybe elderly people, or whatever, who love coming down and they want to go to the checkout and they say hello to Sally in the checkout. How are you? Blah. They want that experience. So what he has done in this supermarket is he has done both. In other words, you can go in and you can have all the automated stuff, which all the young people want, of course. But he has 2 or 3 aisles where if what you want to go in is have a lady check yourself out, check all your stuff out, and chat to you, you can do that. And her point was that there's room for both. So when I think to my favorite restaurant, I'm thinking, if he wants all this old timers coming in, he'll do the old stuff. We'll eventually die off. So he would be as well to do both. I think to have some new stuff on a special menu, to have the cure, I think to serve both and and then let his, as you say, let the customer tell him which direction he should move in.
Well, so absolutely. So here's what I tell all of our customers. And the first is, don't bet the ranch or the farm or whatever. And so the reality is, you're doing okay now. You may be doing great now. You have a core group of customers, they love you. And today looks great. And next Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday looks great. But at some point, Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday is going to look different. And so I always talk about, and we talked about it earlier, the idea that we experiment. Okay. And
Mm.
so now we have some new customers, and so we need to do some things that are relevant to them that might be different than
Yeah.
what we've always done before. We test that, and then over time, that becomes a bigger and bigger part of our business. But if I don't test that now, I never get to the place where it's going to be a big part. So a grocery store, they should have a few lines, and I'm not going to pass judgment on myself, but maybe they have a few lines that say geezers over here, and then they say hip young people over here. There's a Japanese store called Uniglow, which is now global. You buy all your clothes and then you just dump them in a bin, and the bin scans them
Yeah.
and tells you, and you don't have to deal with the human being. So I realize there are humans who don't like to deal with
Mm.
human beings, and lots of businesses have leveraged that. Our dear friends at IKEA, or IKEA as the
Mm.
Swedes would call it, world's largest home furnishing store, you've got to not only wrestle the stuff you want to the ground, you've got to take it home and build it.
Yeah.
There are an awful lot of people who like to do that. Some of us would rather buy assembled furniture that gets delivered to our home or office.
Mm.
But the reality is the world is changing. If we want to remain relevant, we have to pay attention. We might have a couple of different business models going on in the same place. And then over time, we morph to where most of our customers hang out. And so that's what I want people to think about is, you've got to get to the place where most of your customers are going to hang out, and it's not going to be exactly where you are today.
So you're making the case to me that innovation is almost always required everywhere to some degree. I mean, we all need. So for the people listening to this podcast, and they go, you know what, innovation is something I need to make a more active part of our organization. Where do they start? What's some practical
Oh,
steps that
good.
they start?
Well, here, okay, so let me give you one or two hacks.
Yeah,
And I know I'm trying to be hip, and our kids always talk about,
yeah,
well, here's a life hack. So here's a business hack. Um, the first is, as a leader, I think we talked about it. I need to come clean. And I need to say, um, we're great. We're awesome at what we do. Our customers love us, but doing the exact same thing isn't going to make us successful 5 years from now. So I acknowledge we've got to innovate. So the first is we've got to say to all of our people, innovation is what got us here. Innovation is what started most entrepreneurial companies, and innovation is what's going to get us to remain relevant. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I would say to all my people, and it's based on what we talked about a few moments ago, the 99% rule. We're not going to be innovative by simply sitting at our desks or sitting in our warehouse or wherever. We're going to be innovative by engaging the world head on, because that's where change is happening. And so one day a month, we're as a team going to get up, leave the office, and look for brilliant ideas. And then we're going to bring those brilliant ideas back and think about how they could help us to think differently about our business. So we're just going to do that. That's going to be an important thing. The next thing I do as a hack is I'd say, well, here's a brilliant idea. I don't know if this is part of our future, but it's sure worth testing. So I'd like a small group of people to spend a few days or a weekend. I'll buy artisan pizza and premium quality beer. And I just want you to think about, if we were to do something in this area, what would we do? Come up with a test, then share it with some customers and see what they say and come back and report. So those are two quick hacks I can do that show that I haven't given up on our core business, but I'm thinking with an eye toward the future. So that's what I want people to think about doing as just a starting point. Now I want people also to realize that we have this really weird notion, and I think this is where innovation has let people down. An awful lot of companies say, well, we just need to be innovative, right? And if I go to the website of every company, it probably says we're super innovative,
Of
because it
course.
would look really bad to say we have no new ideas, we couldn't care less about being innovative, and we abuse our customers. Okay, so every website says we're like awesome to work with, we innovate all the time. Well, the truth of the matter is, innovation only happens when I'm focused, when I have a problem to solve or an opportunity to seize, and then I really work hard to focus on that, laser focus, and think about brilliant ideas that will help me. And so I want leaders to say, if I'm talking about innovation, am I talking in a focused way? Am I putting a target out there, a problem we need to address internally or externally, an opportunity that's out there, and making it clear to people what we have to do, and then asking them to be innovative? Not saying, hey, does anybody have like a brilliant idea?
It's too vague.
Well, yeah, and it's frustrating to people because you're going to get all these random ideas, and then you're not going to be able to do anything with most of them. And people are going to say, you asked for my ideas. I gave you an idea. You did nothing with it. Why would I be innovative? But if I say, this is what we want to solve for. Now people give me their ideas. Now I actually pay attention to their ideas. So I want people to be focused. So I want them to be focused. I want to admit we don't know. I want them to send people out to look for ideas. And I want them to encourage people that we're going to go out there and learn stuff, you know? And I want to, I know that lots of people talk about the idea of failure. I don't want to take it out of people's lexicon, but what I want people to think about is innovation is about learning until I get it right. It's not about failure, failure, failure. It's about, now I'm smarter, I'll do it differently. Eventually, it's going to resonate with our customers, and the customers need to be part of innovation.
The customers need to be part of innovation, and but it also sounds like is all our people need to be part of the.
Oh, absolutely. So think about this as a leader. When I come clean and say, we need to do some new things, I say, let's all of us on a journey together figure out how to be brilliant.
Mm. So you're doing two amazing things there. One is you're encouraging innovation within the business, but secondly, you're encouraging inclusivity. So you're telling everyone that they're important. So you're actually engaging, even if no innovation came out of it, you're actually engaging all of your people.
Well, innovation will come out of it, but then let's also suggest that Why would I hire somebody if I didn't think they could make a difference in my
Yeah.
organization? Did
Mhm.
I hire them just to go through an inbox and crunch out more stuff that I already know how to do? Or did I hire them because I believe they bring different ideas, different perspectives, and the day they arrive, they're valuable to us? So
Mhm.
it's a whole different mindset. And I think people appreciate that. In a world in which people try to change jobs like every year to 15 months, we need to figure out a way to get them to feel this is where they belong. And
Mhm.
part of them belonging there is we actually value their brain power and what they know and what they could know, how they can use their ignorance to get us to be better.
And we're allowing and encouraging them to make a contribution, and they're seeing that that contribution is impactful in the business. Alan, where can people find you?
Well, they can find if they want to physically find me. I'm in
I'm not
Washington
suggesting they
D.C. No,
track
no,
you
no, no,
down
no, no. I'm
in your
just I'm
favorite
just kidding with
restaurant.
you here. If they want to actually find me online, they can go to my website, which is alangregerman.com, ALANGREGERMAN.com.
We'll
They
put it
can
in the show notes. No
they
worries.
can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I would ask people to connect with me and not just follow me. A lot of people listen, then they follow me. I would love to know who you are and what you're up to. So connect with me. I'm a pretty accessible guy. So they can do that. They can buy, of course. I'm holding up a copy for those of you who are already listening. They can buy The Wisdom of Ignorance. I hope available wherever thoughtful books are sold.
I hope
If
so.
they want to buy the audio, if they like audiobooks, I'm actually the narrator. So if they want to hear 6.5 more hours of me, I guess they can do that. Something our kids have absolutely no desire to do.
I can
Um,
imagine.
so those are the places I guess that
Excellent.
people can find me. Hopefully that's enough. They'll find me. Yeah, no. So yeah, I'd love for people to connect with me. Yeah, no, that's
Well,
probably the
we
best.
will stick all that in the show notes. And Alan, it's been an inspiration and it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh well, thank you for inviting me. Been delighted. Love the conversation.
Thank you so much.